What is up, gamer fam? Welcome to another video by yours truly. Today we're going to be checking out the RG28XX. Now these things are only 45 bucks on their website and 60 if you get them on Amazon. That includes shipping. Plus they have like a $7 off coupon, I think. Now, I am not shilling this. This is actually my own unit that I bought because I was very curious to see. They advertise it as being able to play up to PSP, which means that, in my mind, it should be playing PSP games pretty perfectly. I mean, you know, on point. The game should be running fairly efficiently for the most part. All right, before we get into the weeds of this video, please do me a favor, and if you enjoy the video, please remember to hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoyed this content. And of course, if you know anybody who's interested in this, please share the video with them. Anbernic has been doing a lot lately. I think that it's important when you're looking at these handhelds to pick out the one that fits the most for you. And what exactly is going to make one of these handhelds fit you best? Well, that's one of the things we're going to talk about in this video. Aside from finding out what's most fitting about the handheld for you, I also think it's important to look at what this handheld is capable of at the price point they're selling it for. So there's a couple different things we're going to explore, but I am going to do a hands-on unboxing and review of this magical little device. If it is magical, maybe. So first things first, this thing is tiny. I was not expecting it to be this small. Yes, I saw the measurements. I don't know why. I just thought it was going to be a little bit bigger. As far as the button quality and D-pad, it's great. I mean, Anbernic does a really good job with their buttons, and their IPS screens are really nice. Of course, the package includes all the usual goodies: manual, USB-C charging cable, and a screen protector. Now when we're looking at the specs, like what is powering this thing, what is allowing it to play PSP games or up to PSP games, and here are the specs again. Running a quad-core ARM A53 at 1.5 gigahertz and kind of short on RAM with 1 gigabyte. With these little things, GPUs can kind of make or break what they're capable of doing, and this is running a dual-core Mali-G31 at a clock speed of 650 megahertz. On average, in benchmarks, it pulls approximately 20 G-flops. It's an older mid-range chip from 2018, but for a device this tiny with a quad-core CPU and a gigabyte of RAM, it does pretty well. I went into this not really knowing what to expect, considering the fact that Anbernic had a kind of underpowered ARC-D, which they advertised to be able to play Sega Saturn games, and it doesn't really play Sega Saturn games very well, in my opinion. So getting into the PSP testing, although you may notice some intermittent pauses, for the most part, it plays games pretty smoothly. Presumably, the pauses that you may notice are from a lack of RAM. The good news is the little mid-range Mali is able to pick up a lot of slack, and sometimes these emulators are finicky on mobile devices. You're going to notice better performance on different chipsets or different GPUs, and they could be more or less underpowered than some of the others. Think of it as a comparison AMD to NVIDIA. Some things are optimized for NVIDIA, and some things are a little bit more optimized for AMD architecture. It's kind of the same thing with these chipsets. Interestingly enough, you get a similar level of performance when compared to the RG28XX, which was in the ARC-D. When you're looking at docking capabilities, it does have an HDMI mini port. You're not going to get the same output resolution as an RG3566 though. Instead, you get a 640 by 480 resolution. Look, the screen is great. It's got a crystal clear picture, but it's very tiny. So it's kind of hard to play on this screen. And while the controls are comfortable and do work well, it still feels really small. The USB-C charging port also supports on the go. The system's primary TF port is capable of utilizing a 64 gigabyte chip, in addition to a 128 gigabyte chip. You might be wondering about some of the other systems that this thing is capable of emulating, and N64 might be one of them. Is it capable of emulating N64? Yes, but the lack of RAM kind of makes it a crappy experience. It's not as fluent as you would want it to be. And again, this is using kind of an older version of RetroArch. A lot of the performance that you're going to experience is going to come down to the software optimization for the hardware itself. That is one nice thing about the MP2 is that it's been around for a while and there's decent compatibility and optimization for these emulators. So you should be able to play most PSP games, and you might have to downscale the resolution on some games to get them to run a little bit smoother, mainly the more demanding 3D games. So it does meet their claim of plays up to PSP games. I will give them that. Circling back to whether or not this is right for you, something to consider is, are you one of those people who's just addicted to buying these things because they're cool? Or are you looking for the handheld that's gonna meet your expectations of what you'll be able to play on it and how proficiently it's going to play what you want it to play? Let's take a look at a couple more systems here and see what else it's capable of pulling off. As a reminder, one of the limitations is going to be the 1 GB of RAM. That's going to slow things down just a bit. Since the system does function on a Linux mode, it definitely saves resources, which is a good thing for a setup like this. One thing these Anbernic systems have been consistently able to do is play Dreamcast, and the 28XX does a pretty decent job of getting that done. But you will notice a little bit of stuttering from time to time and some frame drops while you're playing Dreamcast. I haven't seen anything astronomical as far as frame drops, so if you're not super picky about stuff like that, it may not bother you at all. But with the way that Flycast uses memory, it's usually better to have a 2 GB setup to run these kind of games. Again, with the controls, I really didn't experience any major issues, aside from them being small. And I know I've already mentioned that, but they are small. The cool thing is there's obviously an easy workaround, which is plug a controller into the system itself. This would be a great little system and a cheap solution to be able to plug into a smaller 21 or 19-inch monitor. With a resolution of 640 by 480, your basic retro gaming experience should be pretty nice. And as a budget solution, I think it would work pretty well. But consider this when you're looking at pricing. If you're paying $60 for one of these shipped, and you could pay $30 to $40 more, get a much bigger screen and upscaled performance, well, is it really worth it? For example, they just recently had the ARC-D on sale, and I think it was about $95 out the door. And the ARC-D supports USB-C video out, as well as a 2 GB RAM loadout, a 128 GB TF card, and the ability to switch between Linux or Android operating systems. So what else could be drawing you to this little tiny thing? Well, portability for sure. You can pretty much fit this thing in a bikini G-string.
Wow.
The UI is the typical basic bitch Linux UI, which is fine, and it's easy to navigate, so that's good. One of the issues I have with this thing, since it's running an older version of RetroArch, is just that it doesn't have as many options as I would like for some of these systems. This mainly pertains to video options and aspect ratio adjustments, but it's not a big deal because the resolution can't really go very high anyways. And again, this is definitely a budget handheld, but unlike the 35XX, it can pull off playing Virtual Boy games, which is cool. It didn't seem to have any issues playing any of those games or any of the 16-bit consoles themselves. I'm not going to showcase those because they're so common and you're going to be able to play them without any issues. So no hangups on Virtual Boy, and that's good. As far as anything above N64, forget about it. And again, if you do want to play N64, this probably isn't the handheld for you, although it will play most games okay. There are a few key games that it won't play that well. So Virtual Boy's honorable mention is just for you fans out there and people who might be curious about it, because it is one of those dodgy ones that sometimes plays on lower spec systems and sometimes doesn't. Next up, let's take a look at Atomiswave and NAOMI. Here's the thing about Atomiswave. Some games on Atomiswave are more demanding than others, and there is the workaround of using an Atomiswave to Dreamcast version of the game, which is essentially the same exact thing, but plays on a Dreamcast emulator. Most games will play pretty well, but for some reason they didn't include Samurai Showdown 6, and that's one of those ones that struggles. As well as Metal Slug 6. Those games that rely more on upscaled 2D textures are going to take a bigger hit on systems like Atomiswave. But there is a slew of games that play alright, and Dolphin Blue is one of them. But if you're looking for the comprehensive Atomiswave library and the ability to play it well, this is probably not the handheld for you. As we move on to NAOMI, you're going to notice that most games on NAOMI will play pretty well. You're going to be able to play the fighting games library without any major hiccups, and most of the other games that I've seen in there seem to play okay. But again, the lack of RAM kind of stumps the handheld's full potential for being able to play some of these games. With all of that being said, this is a really neat little device, although it's too small for me, and there's really no need for me to have it considering that I already have a Retroid Pocket 4 Pro and an ARC-D, as well as the 353V. If you're just getting into the handheld scene and you don't want to spend a lot of money, this might be a good option for you if you don't mind the size or the limitations in resolution, RAM, and the fact that you're not going to be able to play all the games you want to play on some of these platforms, alongside sometimes stuttery performance. But my overall assessment of it is, for what it is, it's not bad. Although I do feel like Anbernic and a few other companies do offer better options in a similar price range. And again, $20 to $40 more seems negligible when you're thinking about the drastic increase in screen size and performance you might get with some of these other devices. This thing does have one other cool trick up its sleeve, and that is that you can play vertical games in the proper aspect ratio, and the controller is pre-mapped to do that. So it's great for a lot of those old shooters like Raiden 1943 and many of the others that are out there. So I'm very interested to know what you guys think about this little console. Do you think it's worth it, or do you think it's kind of a cash grab? What do you think some of the real benefits are to owning something that's this small at its price point versus what you could get for $20 to $40 more? To me, it seems kind of gimmicky, but I know there are some people who really like micro devices, so it may not be for some of you. So let me hear your guys' opinion on this thing. Drop a comment down below. And if you have any questions about anything I covered in this video, feel free to leave that in the comments as well. Overall, build quality is good, controls are comfortable, and it does play up to PSP games. It's impressive that such a small device can meet those claims, but I feel like it falls short in its retention value. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys then.